Hey, this is Notser, and there are some patch previews for the public test server in 0.5.12, and I just want to talk about it because, oh boy, this is a huge change to the game in many regards, and I just think it's too important to ignore. So, I believe the Asian server released a patch note or a description of what you should expect from the public test for 0.5.12. Ranked battles. Ranked battles are coming back, obviously. Eventually they were. They're going to center around Tier 6 and Tier 8. Only those two tiers. Not at the same time, of course. They've added a couple safe zones for early, which is ludicrous. It's like, don't really need it for early. They haven't described any other change, though. They said symmetrical matchmaking will apply in ranked battle. Great, but you know what was wrong with ranked battle? In the last season, it was too grindy. I would probably have to play triple the number of games that I played the first time I earned rank 1. I don't have time to do that. I don't want to do that. I want to have fun. I want to see progress. I don't want to have to spend every waking moment just playing ranked. So I don't know exactly what is coming, if it's going to stay the same, other than these slight alterations. Now, I know why they're avoiding Tier 7, because the flint is broken. And there's going to be too many people who are good at the game having the flint and having too much influence over the battle. That was my prediction, seeing Tier 6 and Tier 8 as the only tiers. Some other changes they're going to do to ranked battles: Mountain Range, Neighbors, and Trident are going to be added. They're taking out Tiers of the Desert, Ocean, Strait, Land of Fire, and Shatter. They have different reasons for taking them out, but if you've noticed, they're putting in 3, they're taking out, I believe, 5. Yes, 5. So, yeah, there's going to be less map variety than there currently is in the last ranked mode. That's unfortunate. I enjoy playing on different maps. I hope that they eventually come back. I have no control over that, clearly. Let's move on to the more important aspects of 0.5.12. Team play. They are going to be adding XP and credit based on spotting the enemy and their squadrons, damage caused by allies to enemies that you have spotted, and potential damage. What the hell is potential damage? It's the total number of damage that the enemy flung at your ship. Now, I believe that includes torpedoes and main battery. This is sort of trying to encourage people to tank damage for allies. Is it a higher XP and credit income if you're close to an ally? I don't know. It's not really described. I'm going to assume no. Because why would you want to encourage people to be near each other? That's just silly. But that's not really what is important. We knew this was coming. It was in the end screen. We all know about this, Notser. Can you get to what really matters? Okay. So I'm choosing to describe what the Asian server has revealed, because quite frankly, I think some of the regions are a little bit too kind with the words they choose. I think they filter out the Russian developers and their intent more so than probably the Asian server does. So I'm reading it because it is honestly very frustrating to see, because it's just not what they described. So coming into this, I was led to believe, and I'm sure you were led to believe, that these team-oriented XP and credit income would be additive to what already exists in the game, right? That makes perfect sense. I would get basically a net increase in XP and credits if I partaked in trying to spot the enemy, tank damage, and encourage allies to focus the target that I've chosen, right? You would think that you would think that, but the overall logic of granting credits and XP per battle was reworked, and this is their words. Consequently, if a player carries out useful actions, potential damage, damage caused by allies on an enemy you spotted, spotting the enemy, controlling key areas, blah blah, we get that idea, their average reward will not change compared to rewards earned right now in 0.511. So just take that in for a second. If I am playing as a teammate, a useful teammate, helping my allies succeed, I should expect 0 increase in XP and credit income in 0.5.12. What? Wasn't the whole point that you were going to fix the economy, or at least work towards fixing the economy? Something. It's very obvious that's an issue, wargaming. There's not enough reward for players that play outstandingly. It's too punishing. Don't you understand? Nobody wants to play at tiers 8, 9, and 10 because they're just going to lose income. The gameplay isn't that different. You must understand, wargaming, that this is not World of Tanks. You don't use gold ammo to counter a higher tier. Do you know what you do at higher tier? You angle and focus targets that need to die. If your class is good at one class, then you take out that class. And you try and work as a team, you have a numbers advantage, and you move on. World of Tanks is completely different. You can't use the same balancing principles. You can't just say, we don't want to see tier 10 succeed. You should expect to never make income. If that was the case, I would be okay with it, but that's not the case. I am losing massive credits whenever I pull a tier 10, and I'm doing above average in most of those instances. Plus I have premium. You're lucky if you make a positive credit income if you carry, and I do mean carry, a tier 10 match. That's not how it should be. You should be rewarded. At the very least, you shouldn't lose money for carrying your team. You've done something that's far more useful than assisting in spotting or doing damage. You have taken the team's failure and you've countered it with your success against the enemy. So I just don't understand it. And here's more, just to reaffirm exactly what I just said. However, players whose gameplay behavior is mostly one way. Battleships that stay away from the battle. Only look to cause damage to the enemy rather than lead the attack in a certain direction. Or destroyers that focus on capturing key areas but do not do any recon. You will see a less than advantageous position in terms of the in-game economy. You will lose XP and credits if you play the game exactly as you do right now. What? The economy is just garbage. It's garbage. And maybe this is highlighted even more for me because I end up having to play higher tier than probably the average player. But I'm sure a lot of people want to play high tier. They just can't. They can't afford it. I just don't get this idea. I don't understand this at all. How intelligent is the XP and credits going to be for a player? Is there a way to have a higher income? You know, maybe I'm doing everything I can to take the objective, do damage, and being a great teammate. Is there any way to have a higher income? It doesn't sound like it, based on what they've described. Based on what they described, they're very happy. I hope you're happy. They are very happy with the current income for the game. Just mind-boggling to me. Just mind-boggling. And that's not the only change, obviously. This is when the bow armor is going to come in, tiers 8 to 10 battleships. And yes, that's probably going to mean the Tirpitz is not going to get nerfed. It's going to be the best battleship at Bow-On, probably after these changes. And I am someone who disagrees very adamantly at the idea that you cannot set up a system where you can change premium ships. Again, why do you not actively balance premium? Well, they're just going to ask for a refund. Okay, that's a fair statement. Well, what if you give them a way to request a refund all the time? But they can only use a certain number. That way, you could actually have ships that were rebalanced, because you were giving them a way to fix it on their own. Without any questions asked, without going through any channels, you can decide, hey, I'm going to do this. I'm not happy with the changes you made. Fine, that's fine. Is that taking away too much money from you? Do you feel like it's just, well, everyone's going to refund? You know what? People like to talk. I highly doubt that most people would ever refund the Tirpitz because it's not the best battleship at tier 8, okay? Sure, people will say, oh yeah, I'm going to do that. That's the first thing I'm going to do. But again, not everyone puts their money where their mouth is. So, another change they're going to do, Udaloy and the Hobodosk range is going to be nerfed, also the rate of fire. They feel like it's too easy for the destroyer to avoid taking damage at range, and that is very fair. I think that's very fair for the Hobodosk. It is by far the most scary destroyer at range, and it's very hard to hit. And I completely agree. How much range are they taking off? Well, let's see, right? I believe they're also touching the torpedoes at some point. They don't want torpedo range. They just don't want it. They associate long-range torpedoes with low skill, maybe. I just don't understand this. There's not really a way for a player to safely get close to someone if radar exists, if their torpedoes have a low range. So you're really asking for a destroyer to work very hard to avoid taking damage, whereas other ship classes, they don't have to work very hard to avoid taking damage. Especially for how much damage they have, theoretically they could take. So, yes. Those two ships are going to feel a little bit of a nerf. They are also changing the destroyer plating thickness. It's been decreased. This will affect the performance of secondary batteries on destroyers. They're going to be better. Yes, secondary batteries are going to be stronger against destroyers. Oh boy. That's exactly what I want. I want you to encourage battleships to get close range with my destroyer, and also encourage them all to use only one skill at level 5, manual secondary. So the Germans should theoretically be the strongest by far, because their secondaries are by far the best in the game, with the Japanese in second and a distant third for the Americans. Okay. Again, I'm not really seeing things that I like to see. I'm not really seeing something that encourages me to play high tier more because the economy's better. I'm not really seeing this cruiser revival that we really need. The cruisers are just so poor right now that a destroyer doesn't really fear them. The destroyer is going to fear the battleships because that's all they see. The destroyer is going to stay away, as far away from a battleship as they can. Especially the Germans. Why would I ever get close to the Germans? Well, the Germans are so big. Torpedoes are so good against them. We can't allow you to be that effective. Isn't that their weakness? They can't be citadeled by normal means. Isn't the weakness torpedo systems? Gosh, it's going to be so dangerous getting close to any German battleship because every single German battleship who can will be picking up the manual secondary. They have massive DPS advantage over the other two, and it's just going to be even worse for those destroyers. This is going to be scary. This is going to be very, very scary. I'm really terrified that they would do something as stupid as allowing the range of the Hobonovs to get somewhere close to 11 or 10 kilometers. You know, right where the German battleships and even the Japanese can extend their secondaries. Then the player gets to rely on something that doesn't require much skill, secondaries, and be less effective with their main battery, but now that the player is closer, it's easier for them to hit. I don't feel like range on a destroyer is particularly insane, not to the point that they need to address it for everyone. I do agree that an invisifiring ship is not fun to play against. It does feel a little cheap that a player could theoretically do damage without taking any damage in return. But that's not being addressed here. They're also adding a new steering gear for the cruisers at tier 7 all the way up to tier 10. It's basically going to encourage you to always, and I do mean always, maneuver as a cruiser. This is going to add more skill to the cruiser line. It's going to be, honestly, I think they're moving it closer to what we see with aircraft carriers, where there's about 5 to 10% of the population that is really, really good with aircraft carriers. And they're pretty good at doing a lot of damage, killing a lot of players. But everyone else is pretty garbage because they are not aware of the AA protection that some ships have. The enemy team is sticking together much better than before. Maybe just different class of ships that are coming in have defensive fire or better AA protection from the cruisers. There are so many variables that contribute to why an aircraft carrier is good or bad in an engagement, especially for someone who isn't peak skill level at an aircraft carrier. This is just going to make it where if you play a good cruiser captain and he is actively dodging, he might be able to avoid almost every shot incoming. It's certainly going to be a lot harder to hit. It's also going to require a lot more actions for the cruiser to be comfortable. It's going to get on the level, maybe not all the way, but it will get on some level compared to a destroyer and how elusive they can be. And maybe that's what they need to survive the battleship onslaught. I don't think that is the right solution. I think the better solution is to allow them to take a little bit more damage and not just be completely one-shot by a lucky citadel. I just think they're going about it the wrong way. This is sort of turning a lot of cruisers into the Kutuzov. With the elusiveness that it has, it's just not going to fix the solution. It's going to be a frustrating engagement, and it's just a patch that I am not excited to see. There are a lot of changes to it that are very significant to balance. As a content creator, it is fabulous because there's just going to be so many questions that all of you have, and I need to try and contribute to some of these questions, work through them with new builds, different strategies, you name it. It's going to be a real challenge with all these changes. And I'm sure they're going to push some of these changes too far, and you're going to see something bloom out of it. The battleships might feel too afraid to take damage. Well, that would cause a cascade effect because if battleships stay in the background, they don't move forward. They don't have their secondaries in effective ranges. The destroyers might be disillusioned by the safety that they feel from battleships changing their playstyle being really, really, really passive. What if battleships feel no fear and they move forward, they take a lot of damage, they earn more XP because they've tanked damage for their team, but they're dying off quicker, and it's left to the cruisers and the destroyers to have to deal with the game? That would feel really weird, wouldn't it? That would be a 180 from what we feel right now. Right now, destroyers die really quickly, cruisers die really quickly, and battleships die fairly slowly, with aircraft carriers obviously being the last to die. I don't know. Now, this is a public test server. These changes are not final. But, oh man, how often does a developer really go back on something that they put in? You know, it's the whole stigma. It's my idea. It must be good. It's very hard to say to yourself, no, it is my fault. I have the issue. It's very hard for me, and I'm sure for you. I'm creating content. I feel great about it. I think the thumbnail stuff is great. I think my microphone is much better. I think what I'm discussing is helpful to you in-game. But some people disagree, you know. That is the most critical human trait when it comes to content creation. Can you live with being wrong? Can you accept that this is maybe a bad idea and not go through with it? We'll see. We'll see. But the economy thing is really frustrating to me. It really is. I just don't understand it. I understand that you don't want people to, you know, be terrible and make credit. I understand that, but there should be something in between be terrible and absolutely blew the doors off. Now, I'm not just going to talk about this. I'm going to play it when it's live on the public test server very soon. We'll make some videos. We'll talk about different aspects that are changing. Very helpful information, hopefully. I'm sorry for being so negative, but I just felt like the economy was going to be addressed somewhat from these changes. Clearly it's not. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I'll catch you next time.